to be an interesting session. So you were saying something and I cut you off saying we'll go live. So you were saying something.
Yeah, so what I was saying was really what I'm bringing today is very much philosophy in our daily life. I don't know that it's profound, but it's, I suppose, my experience of what philosophy is and how that philosophy has determined maybe the way I mediate or the way I think about mediation. So that's the perspective I'm taking. So I hope it's not too baseline for everybody. But I suppose for me, I don't have the knowledge around the Greek philosophers and things like that. So I'll be really interested to listen back on other people's stuff. So really, it's just to share my experience of probably my own personal philosophies and the philosophies that have been passed down to me in everyday life.
So that's important. But what we're going to do is, first, let me just put up that this is what we're doing, the symposium on philosophy and mediation. Of course, one more person has got added to this, which I'll put up now. Where is the space to put someone else up on this? I have to work this out. So we have Brenda. She's in Mexico. She'll be given a session on healthcare and mediation, something like that. So that she'll be there. But the other thing that I need to do is, of course, give me a minute to put up the fact of where to find information, which, I mean, of course, I'm repeating myself, but I have to put it out. So we are here going to the website mediatorvikram.com. Basically, that's the place. Most of the stuff is lying there. But important thing is that we have to set up these mediation circles. So that information is here. That I think with Andrea, we also have to do the Ireland mediation circle, which we'll discuss. So that's about it on the website part of it. Of course, I think now there are about 445 or 6 videos. Details are there. What I started was something on Patreon. I said, let's have patrons because gifting is not happening. Definitely people, I think, don't even know what they should give. So I started this on Patreon. So you have various membership levels. And of course, there'll be special things for people who are patrons. There'll be special events and they'll be part of things like that. So that's how it's going to happen. And other than that, whatever is going to come up next year, I'll do that separately, put the schedule up. So I think that's about it, Andrea. My time's done. Now it's all yours. It's your show. Take it where you want. I'm sitting here. Get me in if you want to. Don't want to get me in. Don't get me in. So please.
Okay. So I'll start by sharing my screen, if that's okay with everybody. Hold on. No. You're not seeing my... No, why is that?
It's giving you an option to share it. And
no, it's not coming up on this. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second, Vikram, and I see why that is.
But Andrea, at the same time, can you do multitasking, or can you also tell us about yourself while you're doing this?
I can tell you a little bit myself. I suppose people are probably sick listening to about me. I'm based in Ireland in the county of Meath, which is also known as the Royal County. And I mediate. A lot of the mediation I do is around families and separating couples, but I also do community and workplace. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. And I would say I'm learning every single day. And I hope with that learning I'm improving every single day. So I suppose that's a little bit about me. And thank you, Vikram, again, for always inviting me along and allowing me share some of my thoughts. And when I look at some of the others that have shared thoughts along the way and share their experience, it really is an honor to be among those people, and there's such a wide range of experience and everything else out there. And there's so much to learn from everybody else. And from all over the world, and everybody has a different experience of mediation. So that's brilliant. So I just want to say, can you see that now?
I can see it, but let me just say something, Andrea, that you keep saying that I've created this safe space. Let me tell you, because of that, I take it a little too seriously. So I'm very sure who comes in, who doesn't come in, because of that one statement of yours, that you've created a safe space for people. So thank you very much for saying that.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't mean that to limit what you do either, Vikram, but I just feel that that's how I feel when I'm in this space, that it is a very kind of safe place, and it is somewhere where we're coming from similar mindsets and things like that. And I mean, our mindsets need to be questioned all the time, but it's also known that we come from, I suppose, core values is probably the thing. So I just start with this, so I'm not delaying for the next speaker. I loved this introduction. It's not my introduction. It's one that was prepared by the American Philosophical Associations Committee. But I really liked what I had to say. So I suppose I'll just read it out. That's okay with everybody. Philosophy is quite unlike any other field. It is unique both in its methods and in the nature and breadth of its subject matter. Philosophy pursues questions in every dimension of human life, and its techniques apply to problems in any field of study or endeavour. So for me, that's straight away a tick for mediation. No definition expresses the richness and variety of philosophy. It may be described in many ways. It is a reasoned pursuit of fundamental truths, a quest for understanding, and a study of the principle of conduct. And I think as mediators, that is our quest. We are all the time striving to understand how it is for other people, how it is for people that are in disputes, how it is for organizations in dispute. And I think really as mediators, in some way, if we're looking at this, we are philosophers because we have that quest for understanding. It seeks to establish standards of evidence to provide rational methods of resolving conflicts and to create techniques for evaluating ideas and arguments. Philosophy develops the capacity to see the world from the perspective of other individuals and other cultures. And isn't that what we do as mediators? You know, that's what we're striving to do all the time. And it's what you do, Vikram, in this space, is bringing other cultures together so we can understand and see what it's like from different cultures and different perspectives. It enhances one's ability to perceive the relationships among the various fields of study, and it deepens one's sense of the meaning and variety of the human experience. And I think really as mediators and working towards that, that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to understand what it's like for that person, their human experience, and, you know, how we can help them connect within that human experience and for it to be a more positive experience than a negative experience. So I think when we're in the mediation room, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to shift from negative to something that might be, you know, more fundamentally positive, even if there is a loss along the way, you know. So I just loved that introduction. Yeah. So I wanted to share that with everybody.
No, it's really nice. But Andrea, let me just tell you, there is no hurry. The next session is India time 8:30. So
okay.
So that you have enough time.
Yeah, but I don't want to bore people either.
They won't get bored. So, they won't get bored.
So the word philosophy comes from the Greek philos, meaning loving, and sophos, I'm pronouncing that probably incorrectly, wise, meaning literally the love of wisdom, right? And I love that because it's not the love of knowledge, it's the love of wisdom, you know, and wisdom doesn't necessarily come from knowledge, you know, and so I love that to break down what philosophy means, because initially and I always have a story behind when you bring up these symposiums, and I think, I don't really have anything to contribute to that. And I was kind of thinking, you know, Greek philosophers, I don't know, have enough knowledge to actually speak about that or talk about that. And then I went into the words after a little nudge in the right direction, Vikram, from your good self. I was going, no, I have to look at this and see what it really means. And so when I came across this love of wisdom, the literal meaning of what it was, I was going, Busher, that's what I love. I love wisdom. I love hearing other people's wisdom. I love sharing what little wisdom I have, but it's just that thing of, it's our shared experiences and what we've learned from those shared experiences. And really that's what philosophy is, if we break it down to its literal meaning. So then I thought, maybe I do have something to share and something I can say. So when we look at, say, our personal philosophy, so that's kind of really where I'll be looking at today. And it's really our personal philosophy in life is our set of beliefs and values and the thing that guides us through everyday life and the thing that guides our behavior. You know, it's that thing that kind of lets us know, well, you know, something is right or something is wrong, something doesn't sit with us because we have a, you know, a certain belief or value system. So that's important for us as mediators to know, because when I sit in a room with parties, I'm bringing my own personal philosophies into that room. And equally, they're bringing their personal philosophies into the room, their beliefs, their values, and everything else. So when we're in a room, and say we've just two parties, right? Just keep it simple, two parties. We have three different sets of values, beliefs, philosophies of life. And so when we're interpreting and understanding what those, you know, I don't like parties, that's such a legalistic word, but when people bring to us, you know, their set of values and beliefs, we have to try and understand them as a mediator, not necessarily from our set of values and beliefs, you know. So it's been able to actually look at everybody's perspective, everybody's philosophy in that room. And I think these discussions and that, you know, branching out to different cultures helps us as mediators develop and helps us open up pathways to different ways of thinking, different perspectives and different understandings. And by continually having these conversations, Vikram, that you've organised, it makes sure that those pathways remain open. And it makes sure that when we go into the room that we're open-minded, because it'd be very easy to get, you know, stuck in just your own set of values or beliefs, or maybe be open-minded a little bit. But if we don't constantly challenge those things, well, then we can become very closed off to what else might be there. And wisdom has no bounds, and we don't know where it's going to come from or what shape or form that wisdom is going to come from. So I think as mediators, we always have to be open to hear wisdom from somebody in different shapes and forms. It's not necessarily through a lecture somewhere. It's not necessarily through, say, a webinar like this. You know, it's sometimes in the mundane and the simple things of life that wisdom is there. And when we have that love of wisdom, we're tuned into it and we can explore it a bit more. So for me, that's why philosophy is important, say, as a mediator, and that love of wisdom. So today is a very special day in our household. So it's the 18th of November. And this is my dad. And I won't say was, because he has passed. But when I say was, it's like as if he doesn't exist anymore, but he very much does exist. And his name was Thomas Costello, but he was called Tommy. And he was born on the 18th of November, 1949. And I suppose as a child growing up, he passed very much of his wisdom onto us. And he wouldn't have had a huge education. He was a joiner by trade, so he was a tradesman, but he had so much wisdom to pass on. And it actually, I mean, it's the typical story. It's not until you get older and you have your own children and you reflect back and you go, God, why did I not realize he was so wise? Why did I not appreciate it when he was there? You know, I remember as a teenager thinking, oh my God, that man is so annoying. Do you know, he'd say things like these one-worded kind of little sayings that he'd come out with, or he'd break out into a song, or he'd do something. But every time it was about teaching you something and telling you something. But I didn't know at the time. But that's okay, because as I got older, I was able to understand them and go, my God, he was such a wise man. He died fairly young. He was 58 when he died. He had multiple sclerosis. So for a lot of his life, he sat observing because he hadn't got the physical abilities to kind of get up and move around. And actually that chair that you can see in the background, that brown chair, that sat in the corner of our sitting room at home. And that's where he was perched most days. The carers would come in, get him ready and bring him in. And we were young children at the time. And so life would be busy kind of going around him. And he just sat there watching. And he couldn't reach out to grab us or to take us up or lift us up. But he had ways of connecting, different ways of connecting. And every so often, he'd say something, like he passed so much on. He understood people so well because that's what he did. He observed all day long, and he never judged anybody. He didn't give out about anybody. Now, I'm not saying he was a saint, but he didn't see the point. You know, he didn't see the point in judging anybody. He didn't see the point because he understood how short life was. He understood how precious it was. And they were the things he passed on, that, you know, his different philosophies. And I'd give you a kind of a taste of them now. So just to give you an idea of who he was, so you'll understand. So this picture, it's my left, it could be your right, I'm not sure, is of my mum and dad when he was in his health. And that little chubby baby with the dress on and the curly hair, that's me. And that's my brother, who's a year older than me, beside him. And you can see my dad has, you know, it was the era of the Beatles. It was the early 70s then, but he would have grown up kind of, you know, teenage years would have been in the 60s. And so he was a real Beatles fan. He absolutely loved music. And then the next picture, the picture to the side of that, then that's my mum and dad. And he was always smiling. He was always happy. They had, you know, a great marriage. And she cared and looked after him her whole married life. He was diagnosed with MS at the age of, he was 21 when he got sick first. It took a few years later for a diagnosis. So from a very early age, she looked after him. So I suppose in her way, the philosophy she passed on was about caring and nurturing and, you know, providing that sense of connection with family and the importance of family. But I just talk about him today. So really his life was about living. It was about observing. It was learning from those observations. And it was about teaching and sharing those learnings with his children. And he got to see some of his grandchildren. So he even got to do that with a couple of his grandchildren. And he did it in the most unassuming way. I mean, that it was so integrated into his being that it actually didn't feel like a lesson. It didn't feel like you were being taught anything. Now, I'm probably quite biased around him because he was my dad and I think he was pretty brilliant. So, and I'm sure most people feel the same. But I think one of the points that I'm trying to make is that, you know, some of the philosophies we bring us into the mediation comes from our experiences as children, our place of origin. And I suppose to always remember that those people that are in the room with us, they're coming from a different place of origin, a different childhood experience, a different things. And we have to be aware of those things all the time when we go in, that they didn't come from this story I'm telling you, they had a different story. And just to, I suppose, to be mindful of that. So these were the ways he passed on his philosophies in life. They were very simple, but they are profound in their own way. So as I said, he was a Beatles fan. So one of his thing was, no matter what, if you gave, you know, whatever was going wrong and you thought, you know, it's too much, I can't do it anymore, you know, even if it was when we were studying for exams and you get stressed out and you might get upset, you know, he'd be saying, don't worry about those exams. All you need is love. If you've love, that's all it is. But that came from the Beatles song, do you know, all you need is love. So he'd sing it to you, like he'd say it to you and then he'd sing it to you. And that was his philosophy kind of around, you know, that's what was important. And if you had that, everything else would fall into place. And interestingly enough, yeah, go ahead.
You were supposed to sing all these songs. That was
no, I don't sing. I don't sing. He was a great singer. I'm not. I didn't get that gene. The other thing, again, another song was Let It Be. You know, if you'd come in and you'd be given out, say, maybe I'd had an argument with my mother or something, and I'd be going in and I'd be given out. And he'd say, you know, let it be, you know, and they were all words of a song, like, you know, and he'd often burst out into song then when he was singing it. It sounds like, I suppose, you know, everything about him. So he was sitting there, you know, for a lot of his time, and his thing was music. So he loved musicals. He loved listening to the radio thing. So that's the way he communicated a lot of the time, was through song. One of his favorite songs was Imagine. And interestingly, probably about a week before he died, I was in Liverpool and I went to do the Beatles tour. And I remember at the end of the Beatles tour, it's in the Docklands there, at the end of the tour, there's like a waxwork figure of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and Imagine is playing in the background. And I remember knowing at that time my dad probably didn't have much time left, and that song really really pulls at my heartstrings, and the words are, a lot of the words are everything that we're trying to do. It's about imagining a world, where there's no conflict, imagining a world, where there's no religion, imagine, and that's not to say religion is wrong. It's just that religion doesn't divide us, and so again, interestingly, last year I was in Iceland, and I went to see the Northern Lights, and there's a light that shines from the coastline, and it's the John Lennon light, and it was shining that day for Ukraine. And as we passed it by, the boat played Imagine in the background. Now, I didn't know that, but again, every time I hear it, it connects. And it connects to what I do in life, and it connects to everything I strive to do. So again, he was teaching his philosophies through songs, but because he did it through songs, that every time you hear those songs, it's triggered. You're reminded. It's in your, and I mean, they're such iconic songs that they're in everyday life. You could be sitting somewhere and it reminds you about what that lesson was he was trying to teach you. And even then, if you look at Hey Jude was another song he used to love. And he'd sing it to us as kids, I mean, even if it was, and funnily, I only learned recently that song was originally wrote by Paul McCartney for Jules, who was John Lennon's son. And the idea behind the song was when his mum and dad had separated, and this was kind of comfort him when he was going to sleep. I didn't realize that's what the song was until quite recently. And then the word was changed to Jude. But I love this. And anytime you feel the pain, Hey Jude refrain, don't carry the world upon your shoulders. For well you know that it's a fool who plays it cool by making this world a little colder. And isn't that what we're trying to do? Like, we're trying to bring, so when we're in a mediation, and if somebody is hurt and they cut off and they put the defenses up and they don't want to connect because they've been so hurt. And really this is kind of, I suppose, the lesson that, or, the lesson he was trying to teach, that, don't be putting those walls up, like, by getting angry or withdrawing for people, you're making the world harder for yourself and those around you. So bring that little bit of warmth, turn the other cheek, that was another one of his kind of favorite things to be saying to you. So again, so moving on to things he used to say to us kind of in sayings to pass on his philosophy. And look, this is, even though it is Remembered My Dad Today, but it's about how we all have these philosophies. We've all been passed these down in different ways. And this is just particularly my experience, but I hope kind of maybe when people are listening, they'll kind of remember maybe some of the philosophies that were passed down to them and what impact that has had on their life. A great one he used to say to us when we were going out as teenagers, be good. And if you can't be good, be careful. In other words, like, I want you to be good. That's number one. In other words, keep safe. But if you can't be good, be careful. So I know you're going to try test the boundaries or do whatever it is, but always remember to be careful and come home safe, So that was one of his sayings. There are worse off than me. So, when I think of that, like, he suffered for so much of his life. And he would have been a pain from times, but not even the pain. It's the the sense of maybe isolation. I'm sure he felt lonely when we were out the house during the day. And, you'd say, God, Dad, how are you doing today? Are you all right today? And he'd go, don't be worrying about me. There's worse off than me. And that's what he really believed. And he never complained about his condition because he was lucky. Because he felt he had his family. Sorry, Vikram. A tickle in my throat.
Oh, you should take your time.
I'm talking too fast.
Obviously, these are things that you connect to, and it's mean, coming up from the heart, so it's coming out
Yeah,
fast.
sorry.
You don't have to think about it. So
And, so he used to say, there's worse off than me, and the other thing was, your health is your wealth. He had no use for material things in life. Once kind of the bills were paid in the house, there wasn't much else anyway, but like, because he was sick. But he really did feel that, and it makes sense. Like, if you don't have your health, how can you do anything else? Without your health, there's nothing else, so he kind of, through his own experience, knew that. And it was very important for him that we knew that what you looked after first was your health and made sure you were well. And really, when you think about it, that's the message that's going out from so many different places now at the moment. And, with wellness and mindfulness and everything else. But like, from very young kids, he was always saying to us, your health is your wealth. Look after your health, make sure you're okay. And, even if, when you were working or you were studying, worrying over exams, he would always kind of say that to you. He didn't like you to be stressing. A great one used to say, if you came in and you were giving out, if you were giving out about somebody, maybe one of your friends, or giving out about something that happened, or giving out about a teacher, and his thing was, if you've nothing nice to say about somebody, don't say it. So you had to find a different way to tell him the story, which is very much what we do in mediation. So we find a way to reframe the toxic story in mediation. And that's what he was teaching us from a very early age. And it was very much, and he didn't talk bad about anybody. He never gave out about anybody. And so he didn't want his children doing that. So it was you to find the positive. Now, I won't say I've always lived up to that, Vikram, because I'd be telling you a lie. But I do try my best. But that was very important for him, that, how we were with other people, and not to judge other people. I remember even as a teenager, if I was in trouble with my mum and I'd be coming in, and, he understood. Obviously, I didn't understand as a teenager the pressure she was under, trying to look after 5 children in the house, a husband who was disabled, and also try to keep a job going so there was some income coming into the house. And so, of course, she got ratty with us from time to time. And of course, maybe she, flipped the lid a little bit with us and things like that. No, I'm sure we probably deserved it. I'd say I was a cheeky little madam growing up. But he used to say, no, your mum doesn't mean it. He didn't have to go into great explanations. He kept it simple. He kept it so simple so that we could understand. And as I said, sometimes it was later on in life you understood what he was trying to tell you. And what he was trying to say is, she doesn't mean to be hard on you. She's trying to look after everything. She's under pressure. She has stuff going on. And really, I suppose, when we listen to conflict stories, or we listen to people in the mediation room, that's really important as a mediator to understand, what else is going on for them? What is underneath that? What's happening in their life? Is this the straw that broke the camel's back? In other words, what's underneath all this stuff? Like, we look at our conflict triangle, or we look at the volcano, and we're thinking about everything that goes into that volcano before it explodes. And that's really what he used to be saying, when he said, she doesn't mean it. There's other stuff going on. And that's what it was. It was teaching us that it's never about what's said. It's about, you have to figure out what else is going on. And I suppose, really, I bring that into mediation with me every single day. So that was a great teaching for me. The other thing he did was he always made sure you felt seen. And I just gave an example of this, and I had a great conversation. My sister rang me this morning at 6:00, and she shared a link from YouTube of Casablanca. And the story is, so my dad used to say to both my sisters, so there was 2 girls and 3 boys, but to the girls, anytime we were going out anywhere, he'd say, here's looking at you, kid, and he'd give you a wink. And you felt really special, because he did that. Because, and we probably at the time didn't realize he said it to both of us, but he made both of us feel really special just by doing that. And he'd give you an old wink, as you were going out the door. And he was sitting in his chair that I showed you, and you'd be going out, maybe you'd be going off to school, going off to work when we were working, or it might have been going off to a party or something like that. And my sister was telling me this morning that it was only when she was 40 and she was on a long haul flight, and Casablanca was one of the films that you could watch. And she goes, you know, I never watched that. So she says, I think I'll watch it. So she watched it, and she came to the scene where Humphrey Bogart goes, here's looking at you, kid. And she goes, I couldn't believe it. Dad robbed that from a movie. Like, she said, they weren't his words. He actually took that from a scene in a movie, even the wink. And we were laughing about it this morning, but like, it didn't matter where those words came from. It was the effect they had, and they made us feel seen, and they made us feel special in a little way. So he couldn't get up and walk over and give you a hug or reach his arms out to you. So his way of connecting with you was that, and it was the little wink that made you feel special, you know. So it's about knowing that we can connect to other people in the room in different ways. Now, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that we start winking at the people that are in the room with us, but what I'm saying is that there's other ways to connect. And I suppose that was my thing. And what I learned from him was it's important to make people feel seen. And I remember him. So, did you happen to see The Most Beautiful Girl in the World is a line from a song. And the next line is, and was she crying? And like, I look back, I'm actually getting shivers now telling you this piece, but I look back and, you know, things would have been difficult. They were a young couple they were 20 and 21 when they got married. And sickness came to their doorstep very early in their relationship. And so it was hard, like life was hard, and they were rearing children. They were trying to do the best they could. And so my mum struggled to kind of look after everybody. And she's a carer by nature. And to look after everybody, make sure there was food on the table, do all that sort of thing. And I'm sure there was times she was coming in and she looked exhausted, and, you know, she'd have the weight of the world on her shoulder and trying to figure out things. And he'd sing this to her, you know, and she'd smile, you know, and in other words, I see you, you know, and no matter how tired you are, how hard you are working, you're still the most beautiful girl in the world to me. And you know, and that was right to the end of, you know, until he died, he would have sang things like that to her, you know, and it was just making her feel seen, you know, that she wasn't invisible in everything that she was doing, that he saw her. And I think when sometimes I notice when we're in a room, we'll say with a couple, where you're mediating a couple maybe, and one person might feel that they're not seen, and they need that little bit of acknowledgement. And by giving that piece of acknowledgement, they feel that, okay, I matter, I'm important, and, you know, I'm actually part of this, and I'm making a difference. And I think that's what that was when he used to sing that to my mum. It was, you know, I see who you are. And when he said beautiful girl in the world, I mean, she was a good looking woman, but it wasn't just even about how she looked. It was about who she was, that she'd given up her life to look after him and mind him and care for him, and where there are 5 children with him. Even though he couldn't physically help her, he helped her in these ways. He taught us, he passed on his philosophies in life to us. And now we're using those philosophies, or I'm using those philosophies in mediation. I have a sister who works as a special needs assistant, and she's using these philosophies in the job that she does. I have 2 brothers who are in, you know, in the medical profession, and they use those philosophies. I have another brother who has worked in, you know, he's worked in trades, in, you know, in building. He's worked as a butcher. He's a skilled man with great values and a great value man. And he's used these philosophies in his life too. And so we bring them to the world. So I think philosophies in everyday life is so important, because that's what we bring out to the world. But what we're adding is we're learning now from other cultures. We're learning from people, you know, their experience and their philosophies, and we're keeping an open mind to them. And they might be that, you know, this is the way my dad passed them on to us, and then I pass them on, say, maybe in the work that I do. But there's other ways. So you might pass on philosophy through books. So you might be a writer and you pass them on through books. So or it might be that you're a talker and you pass them on through having conversations. It might be somebody like you, Vikram, who has this great ability to bring people together and provide a platform, and you're helping philosophies being passed on and your philosophies to be shared with the world. And I think that's what it is. It's about, we're all philosophers in some way. We all have a love of wisdom, and we all want to share that wisdom, because this life is about learning, and it's about, I think, evolving to a higher being for all of us and for the next generations. And I think if we don't share that wisdom in whatever form that we can share them. So for my dad, it was through songs, it was through sayings, it was through making people feel heard. And that's how he passed it on. But other people pass it on in different ways. So I think for me, although I don't, have, all the knowledge around the great philosophers of our time, I think each of us as an individual are philosophers and have a wisdom that we can pass on and use in our mediation in what we do. So that's really what I'm saying, the next generation. So this is probably this is near the end of my dad's life, and he was in a nursing home at this stage, and he was about, I'd say he's about 56 in this. So he looks a lot older than he was because of the life he had. But this is my daughter, my youngest daughter, and she's now 16. And I had brought him up. He was in a nursing home at that stage. So I'd gone up to the nursing home she was only 2 days old. I just got out of hospital, and I brought her up to meet her granddad. And so I hope, really, I suppose my hope is that the philosophies that he's passed down to me, that I use in my life, that I have built on them in some way, and I'm going to pass them down to the next generation, to my children, and that they will build on that again, and they will learn from their experiences in life, and and they will bring with them an understanding that although we're all different, we're all the same, we're all connected, and everything we do affects the person next to us in some shape or form. And I suppose for me, that's what philosophy is. That's what, the philosophy in daily life is. It's passing on that understanding, that wisdom, and those teachings of life and people. And I think we have to pass them on in whatever way we can. And in the mediation room, by doing, when we're mediating, we're also educating in a little bit of a way. And by things we say, it plants a seed. And at some stage, that seed mightn't necessarily come to fruition, like in the mediation room or by the end of the agreement, but at some time further down the line, that seed might, trigger somebody to do something in a different way or understand something in a different way. So I think in that way, as mediators, we use philosophy, we pass on the wisdom, we have a love of wisdom, we want to learn, we're reflecting all the time. And I think reflective practice is a huge part of philosophy and passing that on. And so I suppose that's the end of my presentation, Vikram. So that's really my feeling around philosophy and mediation. And it's quite a personal one today, because of the date that's in it, the 18th of November. And later on today, my mum will come up and we'll go up to the graveyard and we'll put flowers on his grave and we'll remember him. And actually on his grave, it's remembered with a smile, because he always had a smile. Like every photograph he's in, he's smiling. And he was always singing, he was always happy, he was always, now don't get me wrong, there was times that were hard for him, but that was when the energy state would have been really low, but he always found it somewhere in him to come back up to that positive energy. So for me, he was a particular spectacular man, and I enjoy remembering him. It's not sad for me, it's actually happy, because I fully appreciate him now. And maybe I didn't do that when I was younger. So it's great now to have the wisdom to appreciate his wisdom. So I suppose that to end the love of wisdom, the conversation on it.
That was wonderful, Andrea. Look, standing ovation, just think it's a standing ovation happening here. But that was wonderful. And I mean, the perspective that you bring in always, it's interesting that you brought in this aspect, like everyone looks at those philosophers and think that's where it's all going to come from, but it's going to come at every moment of time. It's going to come from people around you. Just some sentence someone gives you, you pick up something from there. And I think all these songs that you're talking about, they're at that very such a basic aspect, connecting at such a basic level with people. That's why they become iconic songs, because
Yeah.
through generations, the concept being the same, that connection being the same, basic feelings of people being the same, that just goes on. I think that's the connection. And I think that's the same thing. I mean, I'm looking at it from the mediator's perspective and mediation. I think it's connecting at that basic level with such basic words. You're not trying to, you're not trying to bring in something, oh, I'm I brought this major knowledge or wisdom, but connecting it with such basic, I mean, language and everything, that it goes down to connect somewhere very deep, maybe sometimes. So yes, but what I need to do is I have to, of course, you've never gone to my website, but I would want to show you where that song fits in on my website.
Oh, do.
Because the only thing is that I mean, I would wish people would go there to my website, but no, you're not going to. This is how the section of mediation starts. Dispute shouldn't arise in an ideal world. The one that John Lennon did imagine. So you can click here and you can actually listen to the song on YouTube.
So we're connected in more ways, Vikram.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's such an amazing song, though. Like it's just so, you know, when you read the words of it, and you know, and look, there's parts of it that we'll always strive to have, but I think it's lovely to have that vision of what it could be like. And I think if we give up on that vision, you can't give up on that vision. I don't even want to have that as part of the conversation. You can't give up on that vision of, you know, a better place for everybody. And, you know, a bit like what you said, Vikram, like, I think we've had a few conversations where you're saying, you know, it's what you choose to surround you with is what becomes your experience. And so my dad was very positive. So even though we grew up with sickness in the house, there was always love, there was always connection, there was always that sense of caring and working together and, you know, and supporting each other. So that's what we surrounded ourselves with. And that's what made it okay. Like, you know, that's what made it good. That, you know, we were very lucky, you know, and I do consider, even though my dad was sick and there was a lot of things going, we were very lucky. So lucky with the parents we had, like I had. Yeah. So I do think it's what we surround ourselves with.
And I'm thinking a song like Imagine, I mean, it becomes popular, people connect with it, because deep inside, everyone feels that. And it's just that in that outer world that you have gone into various directions because of whatever. I mean, I'm not blaming anyone for that, because it's a world which is complex and a lot of things are happening for people. But right there inside people, those are the thoughts that everyone has. I mean, I would feel that. I don't know. I mean, yes, I have to sit with people who don't have those thoughts. they have that divisive thing, but I just feel that they're pushed into a world where that's the way they think that they have to survive in the world, to create those differences. I don't know, but deep inside, I'm telling you, everyone I feel has the same thoughts, and that's why it connects with people.
I think sometimes we don't stop long enough to actually connect with that. And I think for my dad, because he was sitting and he was observing, he was very connected to those things. And I'm sure, you know, he was a man of faith, you know, so he'd great faith. And he would always say that, you know, prayer is kind of what helped him through those times. So, but, you know, I mean, it's no different than meditation. So, you know, it might have been changed now, but meditation kind of, now, when you think of it, say when, you know, for him, it might have been saying the rosary. It was a form of meditation. You know, it was that form of connecting and quieting the mind. And just, you know, so really he had it figured out. You know, he had it figured out. I'd love to bring him back now and ask him. Oh, actually, one of the things I forgot to say when I was doing the slides, he used to ask these little questions. And they were, you know, I remember at the time rolling my eyes as a teenager to heaven. You know, he'd kind of say, are you okay? And yeah, of course I'm okay. Like, you know, and he'd always say then, is there anything, if he thought you weren't okay then, he'd answer with another simple question, is there anything I can do to help? And like, they were two very small questions, but they were very powerful. I mean, it's like in mediation when we ask, what do you need? And when you ask that question, it's you know, it's a couple of little words, but it can be profound at times. And when he used to ask the question, what can I do to help? He didn't necessarily mean physically help or what jobs could he do. He meant, what do you need? It was the same type of thing. So even in that, he'd ask simple questions. So he knew if he made that question too complicated, you'd either have switched off or stormed out the door. But you were stopped in your tracks with the little question. The first one, you rolled your eyes, but the next one, what can I do to help? And then you have to answer that one, don't you? So it was yeah, he was probably, would have been a brilliant mediator. And he probably was, like, you know, he had the mediator mindset, Vikram.
Yep. And then just thinking that the words that you said about observing, non-judgmental, of course, the reflective part of it. I think all those things, like as a combination, are things which are part of that mediator mindset and have to be. So, and those things, of course, like you were saying, the things about your childhood and what you picked up from there, which is what I talk about in that evolution of a mediator, all these things that you're talking about, simple sentences that you heard from your father, all those little things make you who you are. And so we have to go. I mean, a lot of those things definitely you also would not remember because it's gone into the subconscious, but it is all there. I mean, every moment of your life, I think every sentence, every moment that we keep learning or changing our thoughts or whatever comes to us, I think that's the evolution that has to take place at every moment, every moment. So it's and I think that's the main thing, not to be stuck at one place. You're always, in terms of your thought process, you're always willing to pick up. So it's not just observing, it's actually from there a process, certain processing is happening inside, the reflective aspect of it, whatever, and the output that comes out is should be a better human being. It should be a step ahead. So that's I think that's the, I mean, from a mediator perspective, I'm looking at it from that perspective. It's a really important thing if you have to connect with people, because at every point of time you should be picking up and moving forward. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's what this, and it's that love of wisdom, isn't it? So that's the wisdom that's been passed down to me. And I will have added to that wisdom in some way. I hope, anyway. So I will have added to that wisdom in some way. And you hope then that passes down or that's shared with somebody else. And I think really what's important about this is that wisdom doesn't, when we say wisdom, sometimes we think it has to be something so profound that it's worthy to pass on. But actually, what is usually profound is the simple things that we pass on, because that's the point of connection. That's the basic place that we get back to. And maybe, you know, to understand that everybody has wisdom that they can share with us. And it's like, I remember doing reflective practice with Michael Lang one time, and he said to me, who are the experts in the room? And when I was reflecting on the thing, and I remember thinking, do I say me or do I say thing? You know, kind of thinking, is there a right or wrong answer to this? And as I sat there thinking about it, and I was going, oh, the penny dropped. They're the experts in the room. So they were the experts in the room. And I think as a mediator, that's what we have to know, is they hold the wisdom for their future. They hold the wisdom for, you know, for how they're going to move forward. And it's through our love of wisdom, and that we help that wisdom come forward so that we can help them get to where they need to go. So I think really, you know, that's important to always remember, that those, you know, whoever we have in the room we're mediating with, they bring their own wisdom. And, you know, it could be something simple. It's that nugget of information. It's that little thing that's said. And that's the wisdom, that's the answer. And it might not even be conscious, or, you know, it might be something that's unconscious, but then it's something that we have to help bring into the consciousness, you know, and maybe we do that by asking the simple question, you know, what can that other person do to help you? What do you need? You know, so maybe that helps bring that piece of wisdom into the consciousness.
Yeah, like you said, simple
because most
things.
people do know what they need.
like simple thing that just let it be, that you said, that let it be has so much behind it to reach that point of let it be. So those are such simple aspects. But again, I mean, I feel like you said, the wisdom is all there. You're unlocking it. So it's not, it's something coming out from people to be able to connect to that aspect and to be able to bring that out. I think that's where that special person comes in. And that's where I'll go back. I'm sure every show of mine, I say this: heart, soul, spirituality. Definitely
It is.
important aspects to get there.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
it
I'm going to
is.
stop this, Andrea. I have to sometime just stop saying heart, soul, spirituality, because I say it every time. Yesterday also, it came out somewhere or the other. I don't know. I think I feel that's an important area that can to connect that way.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. And it's, I suppose it's who we are. Like being a mediator is like, you don't work, and I don't work as a mediator. Do you know what I mean? You don't work as a mediator. I'm sure, like it's part of who you are. Like it's heart, soul, and spirituality. Like it's part of who you are and what you bring into the room. And I think that's what makes it so special. And that is why we have to be careful that it doesn't just become an academic subject, that there is the academics behind it. We do need certain amounts of knowledge and we do need things, but we also need to remember what, that it's about what you bring, because you bring so much of yourself into a mediation room, and being okay with that.
We have this book called the Gita in India. Because I don't want to say it's religious. It's not religious. It's a matter of, again, it's about philosophy. It's about life and everything. So that is condensed into a one-page concept of the essence of that. If you read that, and very basic stuff. I mean, as simple as whatever happened for the best. It's such a very basic thing, but I mean, things like that. So I mean, we have that kind of thing, picking up the essence from what you are listening to, whatever you're observing, and to bring it down to such a basic aspect. I think that's what yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. Last night I went to, and it was to do with my husband's job. We went to see La Traviata, the opera. And no, I don't know much about opera. It was, I think, my second time to go to an opera. And what was interesting, so the story is basically about this, woman who is not considered of the higher classes, or not really accepted by the higher class. She falls in love with somebody. She's sick, she has TB, but the father of the guy she falls in love with comes, and he's worried about the reputation of his son by marrying somebody kind of not of the same status and things like that. Anyway, long story short, it's all about, the sacrifice she makes for him for love. And it's about, when you look at it, it's the judgment, the father's fear of what people would, the fear of being judged. And so by being judged, his fear of being judged, he judges his son and, pushes him into making decisions that are not actually right for him. But the end of the story, the father comes and he looks for forgiveness, because the girl in the story, she dies in the end of it, but not before the connection is brought back. And it's all about, how love is more important than status, than judgment, than what other people think, and that in sickness. So for me, I was looking at that and I was going, it was in Italian, obviously, and there was translations. It was like a little kind of screen up above the stage so that you could listen to it. And it's very simple kind of wording. There's nothing complicated about it. And it is the story of, what's important in life, and conflict and sacrifices that people make. And I just said, it's still the same lessons we're trying to teach. Like that was wrote, I think, in the early 19th century, I think. Now I could be wrong. Somebody who is more knowledgeable than me will correct me on that. And but what was interesting is it's the same story. It's the same type of issues that are coming up, and we're still trying to teach them. So even when you look at something, I was talking about the way people teach philosophies and teach beliefs, and this was one way of doing it through opera. Another way might be through art, through painting, another way. So it's not necessarily in books, it's not necessarily in words, that it takes on, different forms and to be open to those different forms and to try and understand what are they trying to teach us? What is the lesson? What understanding is it passing on? Because even an artist, when they paint a painting, what goes into that is their understanding of maybe the emotions they're feeling or a situation. And when people go to art galleries and they look back, they're trying to get a sense of that understanding. They're trying to understand that wisdom. And some people connect with that. So it's what do you connect with to learn that wisdom? Do you connect with song? Do you connect with theatre? Do you connect with opera? Do you connect with art? Do you connect with books? So it doesn't matter really where you get it. It's how you connect to it.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, like, I mean, something written so many years back, still being true. The only thing, the sad part about is that we haven't moved ahead on that. So in 1971, John Lennon writes Imagine. And in 2022, we would listen to it and say it applies so much today as much as it must have applied there. So that's a sad commentary on us.
So what are people not getting? So what if that's, so you said earlier on about that song Imagine, or you know, that's something that everybody wants as an individual. And if we want that as an individual, or even when we connect to our families, we want that as a you know, as a family, what stops us connecting as a world to think that way? You know, because what is that? What are we missing? What is the piece that we're missing? I suppose that's the big question. What is the piece?
I'm telling you, I've kind of figured it out. I mean, I haven't figured it out. I mean, okay, this is my thought processes. I'm not saying I figured it out, but what I've understood in, and that's where mediation fits in, and that's why I say the mediation circles, because that one person who can actually bring people together is missing. Because again, that colonization, decolonization symposium was for that reason, that the divide and rule policies that were, because of which people were conditioned to believe that there is us and them, that whole concept has broken societies and communities. And that person who can actually bring them together, that fair, reasonable person, is missing in communities. And that's why I keep saying that the politics and politicians, the advocacy groups, the activist groups, these can exist, let them do what they want. We have to keep them aside. We need people who can help conversations, help people understand at a very basic level. I'm telling you, in everyone, that is a situation, but they've been conditioned over years to believe that they have to take these stands. They have, like I said, the us and them is there somewhere. That's the way, they think that's the survival concept. Like this whole democracy thing that I keep talking about, that everyone says democracy. Where are democracies? I mean, I give the example of the US or India. I mean, 33% of the votes of the country you get, and you are running that country. 37% don't even go to vote. In India, 25% of the votes of the country you have, 40% don't vote. So, I mean, you've divided society so much. So we need those people. So what is the concept? Mediation circles. Identify those with the mediator mindset. They play an important role in that community, first to resolve disputes. Because of that dispute resolution process, people pick up a lot from there, which they use in their lives. And then people like you who resolve conflicts. I'm on the dispute. I don't have the larger concept. So the people like you will help resolve.
Can I ask you a question, Vikram? What do you think the difference between conflict and disputes are?
Look, I'll tell you, of course, a very simple way. I said, I can take a dispute to court. Can I take every conflict into court? No. I think, okay, Andrea is a liar. It's a conflict of values. But if she lies to me about something that I will deliver this to you, but actually what she delivers is not that, and it's a lie, that becomes a dispute. So that you can take to court. So conflicts will be there on values. There will be conflicts. And for me to say I will resolve that, then I'll become a spiritual guru, which I don't want to be. So conflict resolution is a totally different concept, and conflicts don't have to be resolved. I cannot resolve a conflict saying, okay, like you say, she's a liar. I don't want her to be a liar, but let's resolve it. She'll lie 3 days of the week. 4 days she will not lie. That's not a resolution. How would you? It's a value concept. Values. Yeah.
I wonder though, is the resolution always about who's right and who's wrong? Like, is a conflict resolution maybe an understanding? Is it resolved by understanding? It's not. Doesn't mean that they change, but they might develop an understanding.
No, I tell you, this is where the values, I keep talking about the values concept, because certain conflict of values, now there is no right or wrong in certain aspects of it. You believe something, and someone else doesn't believe that. For me to sit and resolve, they'll take a lifetime. But I am saying, I am okay resolving a quantifiable thing. This is a dispute. Let people experience that. Let them experience that only, because this whole thing of us getting into the larger conflict resolution, sometimes what happens is nothing gets resolved, so they don't actually benefit from the process. But when you actually are working together, collaborating to resolve a dispute, and you actually do it, which is quantifiable, then from there, I'm telling you, everything that you pick up from there, you can use in your conflict resolution. If you have to, whatever needs to be done, they themselves will be smart enough to do it. They are smart enough to do it. They'll carry that forward. So let them just experience the process where they've actually got an end result from something that they were working towards. On the other side, I don't know whether there is an end result. What is that resolution? I'm like I said, I'm a very, I mean, I'm non dispute resolution. That's it. I don't even want to go into the larger theories of conflict resolution. That's my simple way of putting it. Can I take this to court? Yes or no? If I can, okay, it's a dispute. If I can't, it's a conflict, which of course, people like you, like Ken Cloke's conflict revolution that he spoke about. Yes, people like you are doing the larger things in life, the better things in life. Keep that little simple thing. My mediation circles, everywhere you read only disputes there. So that's the concept. That's
Now,
okay.
Vikram, I had to go because
Yeah.
I have to bring my mum up to my dad's grave to put flowers on it. But thank you so much for today. Thank you for allowing me to share that. That was, you know, it actually felt good. Even putting those few slides together just brought back memories, brought back feelings of him being there and everything else. So actually it was lovely. So thank you so much for that.
No, it was really nice. Yeah, I think that warmth that came through. That warmth came through.
Yeah.
It was really nice. So thank you very much. Like always, a pleasure listening to you. And wish him from our side also when you're there.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. See you then.
Thanks.